Welcome back to Mighty Habits, everybody. I'm Steven, and today we are diving deep into a book with a pretty, how do I put this politely, interesting title.
Yeah, it definitely grabs your attention.
The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Feck by Mark Manson, and joining me is Mary.
Always a pleasure to be here.
So Mary, right off the bat, I mean, this title is kind of like the opposite of what you'd expect from a self-help book, right?
It is kind of ironic, isn't it? I mean, most self-help books are all about striving and achieving.
Setting goals, crushing it.
Right, exactly. And then you have this book telling you to not give a feck.
So is this just a clever marketing ploy, or is there something deeper here?
Well, I think the book's popularity definitely suggests that it's tapped into something that people are really craving.
Makes you wonder if maybe we're all just a little burnt out on all the pressure to be, perfect.
I think that's a big part of it, you know? We are constantly bombarded with messages about self-improvement, productivity hacks, optimizing every aspect of our lives.
Yeah, it's like you're always supposed to be hustling and grinding and never slowing down.
Right. And in that context, a book telling you to not give a feck can feel incredibly liberating.
Almost like a permission slip to just let go of all that pressure.
Exactly. I think it's a reaction to this feeling of overwhelm that a
Yeah.
lot of people are experiencing.
So it's not about becoming some kind of apathetic, unfeeling robot.
No, not at all. It's more about being selective with your energy.
Okay, so how does that work?
One of the core concepts is about choosing your values carefully and then focusing your energy on the things that truly matter to you.
And letting go of the things that don't.
Precisely the things that are just draining your energy without adding any real value to your life.
Interesting. So it's
Yeah.
more about being intentional with your energy than just not caring about anything.
Exactly. It's about making conscious choices about where you direct your attention and your efforts.
So instead of getting all worked up about that traffic jam,
You take a deep breath, accept that it is what it is, and maybe listen to your favorite podcast.
uh-huh, now you're talking.
But it's not just about managing those external reactions to everyday annoyances. It's also about being honest with yourself about what you truly value.
And having the courage to let go of the things that don't serve you, even if society tells you that you should care.
Right. It's about defining success and happiness on your own terms.
Powerful stuff. This is making me think about all the times I've stressed over things that, in hindsight, really didn't matter.
We all do it. It's easy to get caught up in that whirlwind of expectations and lose sight of what's truly important.
So the subtle art of not giving a feck is basically like a wake-up call.
I think that's a great way to put it. It's a reminder to step back, examine our priorities, ask ourselves, what do we really want our lives to be about?
And to have the courage to say no to the things that don't fit into that vision.
Exactly. It's about creating a life that is true to yourself, even if it means going against the grain.
Okay, I have to admit, this not giving a feck thing is starting to sound pretty appealing.
Hmm.
But there's a part of me that's still a bit wary. Is there a danger of taking it too far?
You mean becoming completely indifferent to everything?
Yeah, like becoming so detached that you just don't care about anything or anyone.
That's a valid concern, and I think that's where things get a little more nuanced.
Okay, so it's not about becoming a heartless jerk.
No,
Uh-huh.
definitely not. It's more about recognizing that you can't care deeply about everything.
You have to prioritize.
Exactly. You have to choose your battles.
So how do you find that balance? How do you choose what to care about and what to let go of?
Well, that's where Manson's book really shines. It's not just a catchy title and a bunch of swear words. He actually provides a framework for making these decisions, for developing the subtle art of choosing your battles.
Sounds intriguing.
hmm
So what are some of the specific strategies he suggests?
One of the key things Manson talks about is the importance of defining your values. And I don't mean in a vague, abstract way. I'm talking about getting really clear about what principles truly guide your actions and your decisions.
Okay, so it's like creating a personal code of conduct.
You got it. And once you have those values clearly defined, it becomes much easier to filter out the noise and focus on what truly aligns with your core beliefs.
So if something doesn't align with those values, you're basically giving yourself permission to, well, not give a feck.
Precisely. It's about recognizing that your time and energy are precious resources and not wasting them on things that don't ultimately contribute to your well-being or your overall life goals.
This is really making me rethink my whole approach to, well, pretty much everything.
That's the power of a good book, isn't it? It can really challenge your assumptions and make you see the world in a new light.
Definitely. And this one is certainly doing that. But before we get too carried away with all this not giving a feck is business, I do think it's important to acknowledge that this approach might not resonate with everyone.
I agree. It's a bold message, and it's definitely not for the faint of heart.
It takes a certain level of self-awareness.
And a willingness to challenge those conventional ways of thinking.
And it's probably not a good idea to go around telling your boss or your significant other that you don't give a feck about their latest request.
Right, context is key.
But even if you don't embrace this philosophy wholeheartedly, I think there are definitely some valuable insights to be gleaned from Manson's book.
Absolutely. Even if you don't agree with every single point, it's a thought-provoking read that can spark some important self-reflection.
It encourages you to examine your own values, your priorities, and the way you're spending your precious time and energy.
And maybe even to reevaluate some of those shoulds and have-tos that we often take for granted.
Exactly. And in a world that's constantly bombarding us with demands and expectations, that kind of self-awareness can be incredibly liberating. I'm starting to see why this book has resonated with so many people. It's like a breath of fresh air in a world that often feels suffocatingly serious.
It is. It's a reminder that it's okay to let go of some things, to not take ourselves too seriously, and to embrace our imperfections.
And maybe even to find a little humor in the absurdity of it all.
Exactly. Sometimes the best way to deal with the situation is to just laugh it off.
Well, this conversation has definitely been more insightful than I expected. I'm actually starting to see the subtle art in all of this. It's not about being careless or apathetic. It's about being deliberate and intentional about where you choose to direct your energy and attention.
And ultimately, it's about creating a life that is more authentic, more fulfilling, and more aligned with your true self.
I love that.
Right.
And I think it's something we can all benefit from, whether we're full-fledged, not giving a feck converts or just starting to explore these ideas.
Absolutely. And I think the key takeaway here is to approach this concept with a sense of curiosity and self-awareness.
So as we wrap up this first part of our deep dive,
Mhm.
I'm curious, what are some of the things that stand out to you, Mary, from the subtle art of not giving a feck? What are those nuggets of wisdom that have really stuck with you?
Well, one of the things that resonated with me the most is Manson's emphasis on the importance of values.
It seems like a pretty basic concept, but he really brings it to life.
He doesn't just throw around the word values like a buzzword. He really digs deep into what it means to live a life that is grounded in your core beliefs.
That's a great point. He provides a really practical framework for identifying your values and then using them as a compass to guide your decisions and actions.
Exactly. He talks about how our values should inform our choices, our relationships, our work, even the way we spend our free time.
It's like having a filter for everything that comes your way. If something doesn't align with your values, you can confidently say no to it, knowing that you're protecting your time and energy for the things that truly matter.
And that kind of clarity can be incredibly empowering. It gives you a sense of purpose and direction in a world that can often feel chaotic and overwhelming.
I'm really starting to see the appeal of this whole not giving a feck approach. But I'm also curious to hear your thoughts on some of the potential pitfalls. Are there any downsides to this way of thinking?
Well, like with any philosophy or approach to life, there's always the potential for misunderstanding or misapplication.
Right, we talked about the danger of taking the not giving a fick message too literally and becoming indifferent to everything.
Exactly. It's important to remember that this is not about becoming callous or detached from the world. It's about being more selective with your emotional energy and choosing to invest it in the things that truly align with your values.
Like choosing your battles carefully.
Exactly. You can't fight every fight, so you have to choose the ones that are worth fighting for. And I think that's a great analogy for this concept. It's about being strategic with your energy, your time, and your emotional resources.
So it's not about becoming some kind of emotionless robot.
Not at all. It's about recognizing that you have a limited amount of energy and attention to give and choosing to use those resources wisely.
I'm definitely seeing the wisdom in that. It's like a mental decluttering project,
Yeah.
getting rid of all the unnecessary worries and anxieties so you can focus on what truly matters.
Exactly. And just like with decluttering your physical space, it can feel incredibly freeing and empowering to let go of the things that are weighing you down.
I'm sold. But before we all go out and start telling everyone to get lost, because we don't give a feck, I think it's important to explore this concept a bit further.
Absolutely. There's a lot more to unpack here, and we've only just scratched the surface.
So stay tuned, everyone, because in the next part of our deep dive, we'll delve deeper into some of the specific strategies and techniques that Manson outlines in the subtle art of not giving a feck. We'll explore how we can apply these principles to our own lives in a way that is both effective and, dare I say, even a little bit fun.
So, one of the most intriguing things about Manson's approach is how he kind of connects this idea of not giving effect to our values.
It's not just about being indifferent,
Yeah.
right? It's like
Yeah.
you were saying before, being selective about what you actually care about.
Right. And that selectivity really stems from your values.
So it's not just about like tuning everything out.
Yeah.
It's more about being intentional with what you let in.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You can't, and you shouldn't care deeply about everything. I mean, we only have so much energy, right? So much attention.
Right? You can't be going around with your heart in your sleeve for every single thing.
So the question becomes, what is truly worthy of those precious resources? What deserves your energy?
And that's where your values come in. They kind of act like a filter, helping you decide what to prioritize and what to just let go of.
Right. Manson actually argues that a lot of us get caught up caring about things that really don't align with our true values,
Well,
Like maybe we stress over impressing people we don't even like or chase these goals that society tells us are important, but they don't really resonate with us personally.
it's almost like we're living on autopilot, following a script that someone else wrote.
He's calling us to wake up,
Mm. Yeah.
become conscious of what truly drives us and start living a life that's more, in sync with our authentic selves.
This reminds me of something we were talking about earlier about how this book is almost like a rebellion against that pressure to constantly optimize ourselves.
It definitely has that element to it. Like it's a pushback against this idea that we always need to be striving for more, achieving more, buying more.
It's okay to just,
Exactly. And to accept ourselves as we are, flaws and all.
with all our quirks and imperfections.
Right. He reminds us that true happiness and fulfillment, they come from aligning our actions with our values, not from chasing external validation or achievements that ultimately don't really mean anything.
It's like chasing fool's gold.
It can be a really radical idea, I think, especially in a culture that often equates our worth with how productive we are or how much we achieve.
So for our listeners who are like, yeah, this aligning my life with my values thing sounds awesome, where do they even begin?
Well, Manson does offer some practical advice on how to identify your values. He emphasizes that this isn't about choosing values that sound good or that you think you should have. It's about really getting honest with yourself about what truly matters to you.
Like deep down in your gut.
Yeah, exactly. It's about reflecting on your experiences,
Mm.
both the positive ones and the negative ones, and kind of identifying those underlying principles that have shaped your life.
Maybe thinking about times when you felt really fulfilled, or conversely, times when you felt totally out of alignment with yourself.
Right. He encourages us to ask ourselves questions like, what kind of person do I want to be? What do I want to stand for? What kind of impact do I want to make on the world?
So it's a process of self-discovery.
Exactly. It's about peeling back those layers and getting to the heart of who you really are.
I love that. And once you have a clear understanding of your values, then it becomes much easier to make decisions that are in line with them.
Right. It's like you have a compass to guide you through all of life's choices.
It makes decision-making so much simpler when you have that clear sense of direction.
Exactly. It gives you a framework for evaluating, opportunities, relationships, even your own thoughts and behaviors.
It's funny. This is all starting to sound very practical and down to earth, even though the title of the book might suggest otherwise.
It's true. Despite the provocative language, Manson offers a lot of concrete advice on how to actually apply these principles to your everyday life.
So it's not just about sitting around meditating on your values.
Not at all. It's about taking action, making choices, and living a life that reflects those deepest beliefs.
Can you give us an example of what that might look like in practice?
Sure. Let's say one of your core values is creativity. Manson might encourage you to carve out time for those creative pursuits, even if it means saying no to other commitments.
Maybe even taking a leap of faith and pursuing a career that allows you to express that creativity more fully.
Exactly. It's about aligning your actions with those values, even when it feels scary or uncomfortable.
That reminds me of another important point that Manson makes. It's this idea that true growth and fulfillment, they often come from embracing discomfort.
Right. He argues that we learn and grow the most when we push ourselves outside of those comfort zones.
That's where the magic happens.
He even goes so far as to say that we should actually seek out challenges and obstacles because they force us to confront those limitations and develop resilience.
What doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
Exactly. Manson really believes that by embracing that discomfort, we develop a stronger sense of self and a greater capacity for happiness and fulfillment.
It's funny, I never thought I'd hear a self-help guru telling people to go out and seek discomfort.
I know, right? It goes against a lot of the conventional wisdom you hear about trying to create this life that's free from pain and suffering.
The whole good vibes only mentality.
But Manson's saying, hey, pain and suffering are just inevitable parts of life. They're part of the human experience.
You can't escape it.
And by trying to avoid them, we actually miss out on some of the most valuable opportunities for growth and transformation.
It's like trying to learn to ride a bike without ever falling off.
Yeah,
You have to kind of embrace those scrapes and bruises as part of the process.
exactly. And I think that's a powerful metaphor for life in general,
Mhm.
We're going to face challenges, we're going to experience setbacks, but it's really how we choose to respond to those experiences that shapes who we become.
This is all incredibly insightful. But I'm also starting to wonder, how do we know which challenges to embrace and which ones to let go of? I mean, we can't possibly take on every single obstacle that comes our way.
So, as we've been talking about this whole not giving effect thing, it's kind of striking how counterintuitive it is. Our culture often tells us we should care about everything, try to be liked by everyone.
Right. Always be striving for that approval.
Exactly. We're constantly bombarded with all these messages about fitting in, being successful, achieving this like elusive ideal of perfection.
And Manson's like,
Yeah.
maybe that's all BS.
He really challenges us to question those societal expectations. Ask ourselves, are these expectations actually serving us? Or are they holding us back from living a more, authentic and fulfilling life?
He's giving us permission to break free from the mold.
Exactly. Define success and happiness on our own terms.
Embrace our imperfections.
Acknowledge our limitations and just focus on what truly matters to us, even if it's not, what society deems important.
And that can be incredibly liberating.
Oh, absolutely. It's about reclaiming your power, your time, your energy, and directing it towards those things that bring you, joy, purpose, meaning.
So how do we actually put this into practice?
Yeah.
I mean, it's one thing to talk about not giving effect in theory,
Yeah.
but how do we actually translate that into real-world action?
Well, one of the most powerful tools that Manson gives us is this idea of choosing your values. And he really emphasizes, the importance of identifying those principles that are most important to you and then using them as a guiding force in your life.
Like a personal compass.
Exactly. A set of internal guidelines that help you navigate, all the complexities of life and make decisions that are consistent with who you want to be.
So if something doesn't align with your values, you can confidently say no to it, even if it means, disappointing someone or going against the grain.
Right. It's about setting those boundaries, protecting your time and energy, and just prioritizing those things that bring you closer to your goals and that ideal vision of yourself.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
But I imagine it's not always easy to say no, especially, when we're so conditioned to be people pleasers or we're afraid of missing out.
It definitely takes practice and courage, but Manson does provide some really helpful strategies for navigating those situations. He encourages us to be assertive, to communicate our needs clearly, and to not be afraid to disappoint people who aren't aligned with our values,
You saying it's okay to put yourself first.
right? Prioritize your own well-being and happiness.
That can be revolutionary for some people,
Absolutely.
right?
Especially for those who have been conditioned to believe that, self-care is selfish or that they should always put other people's needs before their own.
Right. It's like you can't pour from an empty cup.
Exactly. You have to take care of yourself first in order to really show up for the people and things that matter most to you.
And that's not selfish. That's essential.
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
essential for living a healthy, balanced, fulfilling life.
This is making me think about all the different areas of our lives where this not giving effect approach could be really beneficial. I mean, we've talked about work and relationships, but what about, our health, our finances, even our personal growth?
It's relevant to every aspect of life. For example, when it comes to health, Manson might encourage us to focus on making those sustainable lifestyle changes that align with our values, rather than, getting caught up in fad diets or extreme workout routines that we're probably going to abandon after a couple of weeks.
Right. Find that balance that works for you.
Exactly. Something that supports your overall well-being without adding, unnecessary stress or pressure.
And what about finances?
Well, when it comes to finances, he might suggest that we focus on, building a solid financial foundation based on our values, instead of chasing get-rich-quick schemes or trying to keep up with the Joneses.
Right. It's about making conscious choices about how you spend your money.
Exactly. Aligning your spending habits with your priorities and finding contentment with what you have rather than always striving for more.
And I imagine personal growth is another big one.
Absolutely. He might encourage us to pursue, learning experiences and challenges that align with our values and our interests, rather than feeling like we have to take on every opportunity that comes our way.
It's about being really intentional with your time and energy.
Exactly. Focusing on the things that really light you up and help you become, the best version of yourself.
It sounds like this not giving a feck approach can be applied to pretty much any area of life.
I think so. It's about creating a more, intentional, fulfilling, and authentic experience.
So basically, it's not about being careless or apathetic. It's about being deliberate and intentional about what you choose to care about.
Exactly. And I think that's a really important takeaway for our listeners. They have the power to choose what they care about, set those boundaries, and create a life that really reflects their true selves.
And it's about embracing the journey.
Right, with all its challenges and imperfections, knowing that true growth and happiness come from living, in alignment with our values.
This has been a great conversation, Mary.
Yeah.
I'm feeling really inspired to start applying some of these principles to my own life.
Me too. It's a powerful reminder that we don't have to live according to someone else's script.
Hmm.
We have the power to create our own story, define success on our own terms, and live a life that is truly authentic and fulfilling.
And for our listeners who are ready to embark on that journey, we highly recommend checking out The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Feck by Mark Manson.
It's a thought-provoking, often humorous, and surprisingly practical guide to living a more intentional and meaningful life.
And if you enjoyed this deep dive, be sure to follow or subscribe to Mighty Habits for more insightful conversations about, personal growth, productivity, and just the art of living a better life.
Thanks for joining us, everyone.
And remember, you have the power to choose what you give a feck about. Choose wisely.